Carlos Mencia at one point was one of the biggest comics in the world, selling out arenas worldwide and hosting his own sketch comedy show, Mind of Mencia, on Comedy Central. In the mid-2000s, Mencia was on top of the world. His show was the second highest rated program on Comedy Central, only behind South Park, and he even starred in a Bud Light commercial during Super Bowl 41.
Okay, class. If you're in the South, you say, "Hey, feller, give me a Bud Light." Hey, feller, give me a Bud Light. In New York, you say, "Hey, give me a Bud Light." You got a problem with that?
Bud Light, you got a problem with that?
In East LA, you say, "Give me a Bud Light, Holmes."
Give me a Bud Light, Holmes.
More importantly, if somebody asks you for a Bud Light, you say,
Don't speak English. Refreshingly smooth, Bud Light. Always worth it.
Bud Light?
Bud Light.
Bud Light.
Bud Light.
Things were simply on a constant upward trajectory for the talented comedian. He was a likable guy, he was well connected in the industry, and he had a die-hard fan base. But things suddenly came crashing down as he was accused of stealing jokes by a number of fellow comedians. Mencia was born Ned Arnel Mencia in Honduras on October 22nd, 1967. He was one of 17 siblings and moved to the States as a child, settling in East LA with his aunt and uncle. Mencia claims that he dealt drugs for a period of time while growing up to get by, and even committed a home robbery at one point. One night, Mencia decided to partake in an open mic night at the notorious Laugh Factory in LA and did well. From there, he started performing at other comedy clubs around the area, such as the Hollywood Improv and the Comedy Store. It was actually the owner of the Comedy Store, Mitzi Shore, who suggested that he change his name from Ned to Carlos.
Carlos Mencia wasn't his name.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Carlos didn't change it.
Was that Ned or something?
It's Ned.
Yeah, no.
He went up as Ned, and Mitzi gave him the name Carlos Mencia.
She's the one that changed it.
Yes.
Oh.
In his early 20s, Mencia was already making a name for himself in the LA circuit, which eventually led to high-profile public appearances on the Arsenio Hall show, as well as a number of hosting gigs on shows like Comedy Compadres, KTLA, and HBO's Loco Slam. In 1994, at just 25 years old, Mencia got the opportunity to release his first comedy special with HBO on his television series HBO Comedy Half Hour, appearing on Season 1 and Season 2. This was a legendary series as it featured specials from some of the biggest comedians at the time, such as Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, and Louis C.K., to name a few. Mencia's rise came fast because, unlike other comics, he started headlining right away as opposed to opening like most beginners. He really dominated the Latin markets in the Southwest, where he would sell out consistently. By 2001, he put out his first comedy album through Warner Records titled Take a Joke America, which was received well. But his real breakout moment came the following year when he performed on the television series Comedy Central Presents. This performance almost served as a pitch and what ultimately led to him getting his own show on the network that you may remember, titled Mind of Mencia. When it was first picked up, the original plan was to partner him with Dave Chappelle, who at the time was still doing the Chappelle Show, which was the biggest thing on TV at the time. Mind of Mencia was scheduled to come on after the Chappelle Show to serve as a 1-2 punch, but when it came time to air, Chappelle was in the midst of infamously leaving the industry altogether, leaving Mencia to almost serve as a replacement for the legendary sketch comedy show, although it wasn't intended to be that. Season 1 did alright overall, but it was Season 2 that really blew up. They were the second highest rated show on Comedy Central behind only South Park. The show was unbelievably popular, and it was at this point where Mencia was at the very peak of his career. He was selling out stadiums and his show was absolutely on fire. But it didn't take long before things started to completely fall apart. In 2007, Rogan would notoriously confront Mencia on stage at the Comedy Store for stealing jokes. It was such a pivotal moment in both of their careers. Rogan took an ethical stance against a comic who was much bigger in terms of popularity during a time where other comics stayed silent in fear of getting blackballed within the industry due to Mencia's power and influence.
I'm somebody important enough that he had to end the show by saying Carlos Mencia. That's who I am.
You don't know that nobody supports God. You don't know that nobody. If someone steals a riff from a song, that shit's in the news constantly. Motherfuckers steal shit and make it on HBO. They steal shit, they put it on television. What are you saying? Listen, I know you
He's saying that you're acting like a little bitch.
No, you're not saying that.
Yes.
You're agreeing with me, motherfucker.
They're not agreeing with you.
Incidents like these caused Mencia to become very disliked within the comedy community. The accusations go pretty deep, as not only was he allegedly taking other comics' material, but he also had a reputation for bumping people back in the 90s. If you were a comic and say had a 10 o'clock spot at a club, you might never be able to get on stage because Mencia would perform for 3 to 4 hours past his scheduled set time. Many of these comics he would bump were some of the most popular comics today, such as Whitney Cummings, Bobby Lee, Joe Rogan, and so on.
That was a lot of it. But I think equally as bad was him bumping people back in the 90s. So, when you went up this weekend, right? At the store? Or last week sometime?
Yeah.
What time do you get spots, 9:45, 10, right?
Yeah, I'm more like 11.
11. So if he gives you an 11 o'clock spot, right? When you show up at the club, you think you're going to get up between 11 and 11:15, right?
Yeah.
But back in the late 90s, if you had an 11 o'clock spot, it meant people didn't even show up.
Wow.
Because they knew that they wouldn't be able to get up.
Damn.
Because they knew that Mencia or Eddie Griffin or some of these guys, and they would do 3 or 4 hours on stage.
What?
Prior to the Rogan incident, George Lopez actually had his own run-in with Mencia about stealing jokes. Lopez claims that on Mencia's HBO special, there was about 13 minutes of material that he took from Lopez. Things got escalated between the two, and Lopez actually put his hands on him.
George Lopez, is it true that you had to put hands on Carlos Mencia before?
That was a long time ago. That I did.
He stole a joke or something? What
1990.
happened?
They just stole one joke. It was a bit of a, he did an HBO thing and it had quite a bit of material. So it was a long time ago, 93.
Right.
Over 20 years ago.
So was it like, hey, you stole my joke, or was it like, did you really was it physical?
It was a physical.
I heard that.
At this point, the floodgates were open, and Mencia was quickly becoming a villain in the comedy world. More and more accusers were coming out, and the narrative even made its way to Comedy Central's biggest show, South Park. In 2009, South Park released an episode titled Fish Sticks featuring Mencia. The plot consisted of him essentially stealing a joke originally written by the character Jimmy Valmer. In the episode, Mencia makes an appearance on the Conan O'Brien show and claims credit for the joke while directing it towards Kanye. West, who didn't get the joke, gets offended and ultimately kidnaps Mencia, then beats him to death with his crew. So it was at this point where his career took a major hit. The backlash for the joke stealing was more severe than anticipated, and with the advice of his management, he decided to lay low for a while. During the 2010s, many thought Mencia had fallen off the face of the earth, as when social media became prevalent, he wasn't all that active. He was still on the road doing shows, but instead of selling out stadiums, he was back to doing clubs. It was during this period where Mencia really struggled with his mental health and even had suicidal thoughts. During the late 2010s, Mencia would make a bit of a resurgence. He would make appearances on various podcasts, and when questioned about the accusations, Mencia still to this day doesn't believe that he's done anything wrong and that he's never stolen a joke, which of course didn't go well with fans and the internet.
So let me tell you how America's built. He said America likes new heroes.
I agree.
But when they get new heroes, America loves to see that new hero fall.
Right.
But what America loves even more is to see that fallen hero redeem himself and come back up.
Completely
and
agree.
Bigger. I think you have a big opportunity to do that, man.
I agree, but here's the problem. You want me to, or people want me to accept something that I didn't do in the way that they say that I did.
So how are you feeling now with all this, the controversy that happened a decade ago? I mean, what's going on now?
14 years ago now.
14 years ago, yeah. You texted me.
I realized, like, my absence from the internet in all those years allowed a narrative to be created that will never change, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter how I come about it. My biggest regret is back in those days, when all this stuff happened, was to fight it.
But Ned, why not do in the beginning just a blanket apology?
But I wasn't. See, let me get this. Understand what happened. Anytime, even to this day, bro.
Yeah.
Somebody says you stole a joke. I go, okay, well, what joke was it? Not angry. Like, what joke?
Right now in 2024, Mencia is making an attempt at a comeback. He's been more active on various platforms, getting on podcasts and doing interviews. He's been more active on social media and even started his own podcast. All in all, Mencia was and still is a very talented comedian with natural gifts. He's been through some of the highest highs and lowest of lows over the years, and whether you believe he is a serial joke thief or if you believe this is simply overblown, we can only hope that he's learned from it and does well going forward.
Listen to me and look at me when I tell you this with all honesty. If you think that I steal jokes, fuck yeah, you're right. Of course I fucking steal jokes. Are you out of your fucking mind? When I come to a comedy club, you better run, bitch. You better get the fuck off stage. Because if anything you say is even remotely funny, I'm gonna make it mine. And all I'm gonna do is say Mexican in the front. I'm like a rapper. I just sample shit and make it my own. Was that really my song? I don't know. But it sounds like mine. But it kind of sounds like somebody else's. It's a hit, bitch!